Hello everyone, and welcome to the Microsoft Security Update Summary, where I will present a short recap of what was released today, June 9th, 2026. My name is Josh Daniel, and I'm a risk manager in the customer service and support organization here at Microsoft. I'm going to start this video with an overview of the release, and then I'll dive into a few of the vulnerabilities. Please note that the details of the vulnerabilities that I'm covering in this video may change, and the authoritative location for information will always be the online content in the Security Update Guide. Before I dig into today's release, I like to compare it to the previous 12 months to see how it stacks up. There were 202 newly disclosed CVEs in today's set. Of those, 54 fall into the remote code execution impact category. This is the type of impact that generally has the highest level of risk associated to it. It would allow a threat actor to install software and other high-level activities. We've been averaging just above 26 over the past 13 months, so a little bit more than double our average there in the release this month. Next, we'll move into scoring, where Microsoft uses the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, or CVSS. This is an industry standard methodology to rate or score vulnerabilities and allows us to compare and contrast vulnerabilities across different products, services, vendors, and technologies, so that a 9.8 CVSS score on one product carries about the same risk as a 9.8 vulnerability in a completely different product with a completely different vendor. This month, the highest scored CVE comes in at that 9.8 mark out of 10, and that's a little bit above our average of around 9.6, just under 9.6 over the past 13 months. Next, we'll move into average scoring. So this is the average score across all of the newly disclosed CVEs. This month it comes in at 7.18, which is considerably lower than our average over the past 13 months of 7.35. Next, we'll look at the number of vulnerabilities in today's release that are scored 8.8 and above. We've been averaging just under 12 in this category, and this month we have 17 that are 8.8 or above on that CVSS scale. Next, we'll move into publicly disclosed vulnerabilities. These are vulnerabilities where the details of a vulnerability have been made public in one way or another. This month we have 3, and we've been averaging just over 1.5 at 1.62 over the past 13 months. And the last chart that I'll show here in relation to how this release stacks up through to the previous 12 months is vulnerabilities that are known to be exploited at the time of release. These are vulnerabilities where, in one way or another, either Microsoft directly or through our partners have been able to detect exploitation of a vulnerability. This month, there are no vulnerabilities that were disclosed today that were known to be exploited prior to release, and we've been averaging just over 1 of these per month over the past 13 months. Okay, so that's the comparison. Now we'll dive into just this release, and for that we'll start with our overview chart where we put our Windows products towards the bottom, and then as we move up the chart we get into the products that are not necessarily serviced every single month. On the Windows side, we've been averaging in the mid to low 60s depending on the specific operating system. This month, as we can see, we are well and above that number in the Windows set. A big reason for the higher number of Windows CVEs this month has to do with our hot patching process. This is an unplanned baseline month, so we've moved into this release fixes for vulnerabilities that require a reboot. And so if you are using the hot patch process, there will be a reboot required in order to fully protect the system. If you're not using hot patch, it's just a regular month where reboots are required to install the updates. As we move up the chart, we get into Office and SharePoint with a handful of vulnerabilities that are being fixed this month with updates to those products. Azure has a handful of vulnerabilities that have updates as well. Exchange has a handful of vulnerabilities this month that are addressed with updates. Developer tools such as .NET and Visual Studio have updates to address some vulnerabilities. Defender has a couple of vulnerabilities that are being addressed this month. And rounding it all out, Dynamics 365 has an update this month to address a vulnerability. Okay, the first vulnerability that I'll talk to this month is documented as CVE 2026-47291. This is a critical remote code execution vulnerability in the HTTP component of Windows. This one was privately disclosed with no known exploits out in the wild. This one has a base CVSS score of 9.8, so it hits that high water mark for the release. The attack vectors over the network, the attack complexity is low, no privileges are required, and no user interaction is required to leverage this vulnerability. Now, there is a documented mitigation here that has to do with modifying a registry key, or actually more specifically, if a registry key is anything other than default, you may need to take a look at this mitigation, and that can protect you in the gap between now and when the update is installed. The default value of that registry key, that max request bytes, that default value is not impacted by the vulnerability. It's only systems where that registry key has been altered from default. There are no documented workarounds. As far as the affected software, it's all versions of Windows in mainstream support, whether that's Server 2016 up through the latest 2025 or Windows 11 on desktop. Next, we'll look at a critical remote code execution vulnerability in the Windows kernel. This is documented as CVE 2026-45657. This was privately disclosed with no known exploits out in the wild. This one also hits 9.8. Attack vectors over the network, attack complexity is low, no privileges, no user interaction required to leverage this. There are no documented mitigations or workarounds for this. As far as the affected software, it's a little bit smaller set of products. It's Server 2022 and Server 2025, as well as Windows 11. And the third vulnerability that I'll cover today is documented as CVE 2026-44815. This is a critical remote code execution vulnerability in the DHCP client, privately disclosed, no known exploits out in the wild. This has a base CVSS score of 9.8. The attack vectors over the network, the attack complexity is low, no privileges are required, no user interaction is required to leverage this. There is a mitigation that's available here, but it's a little complex. It's not necessarily easy to implement. If you're interested in that, take a look at the CVE itself where there's more details. There are no documented workarounds for this. As far as the affected software, it's all versions of Windows and mainstream support, whether that's Server 2016 up through Server 2025, as well as Windows 11. Now, I've talked to 3 separate vulnerabilities in Windows this month, all rated at 9.8, all with an attack vector that's over the network. No privileges are required, no user interaction required. Oftentimes we get asked, is this a wormable type of vulnerability? And in this case, all 3 of these vulnerabilities I've talked to today fall into that category of a wormable vulnerability. Now, there's mitigations for a couple of these, and one of them, the Windows kernel, it doesn't apply to every version of Windows. And so there are some ways to help break that up. But if you were in a position where you were looking to determine whether you needed to accelerate patching this month or delay patching this month, I would strongly suggest looking at these vulnerabilities, these 3 Windows vulnerabilities that require no privileges, no user interaction, and can be leveraged over the broader network. And it is my opinion that should be justification for accelerating patching if possible. Again, it's not 1, it's not 2, it's 3 separate vulnerabilities that threat actors will be looking heavily at to see if they can build exploit code right away. So I apologize for ending on a down note, but my goal with this video is to provide information that is actionable, that allows folks to understand what the risk is of not patching, or if the risk is too high and they need to accelerate that patching process. I know in a lot of organizations there's some flexibility to that. Other organizations there's not. So if you're in a spot where you do have the option to accelerate, this month might be one that you look into accelerating those updates. So I want to thank everyone for letting me talk about vulnerabilities in Microsoft products and how to protect yourself, and I will talk to you all next month. Thank you.